StephTherapy911 presents Stephanie Samuels. Straight Talk. Join us every Sunday, 7 p.m. live Eastern Standard Time on Facebook Live. It's real, raw, and uncensored. And now, here's your host, Stephanie Samuels. Stop the stigma.
Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday night on a Labor Day weekend. This is Stephanie Samuels. Welcome to Straight Talk with Stephanie Samuels. And tonight is my honor to have my guest, although he's not a guest, I think he's part of the family, retired police officer John Morris on with me. And September is Suicide Awareness Month. And certainly law enforcement has really been struggling with that for years. This year, once again, is just keep shaking our heads. And I thought it was really timely. So, for the past 2 weeks, so I had Dawn Stevens, whose husband died in the line of duty death, had Cassie Amburn, whose husband had taken his life, and John. And as Cassie discussed last week, she talked about the incidents that her husband had been involved in and kind of different things. And John and I go back to 2007, and he had texted me after the show. Never texted me after the show. And he said, of all the shows, that one was really awesome. And I thought about it, and I thought about my relationship with John, and I thought about what he's been through, and I know that he teaches at the academy. And I truly know that when I ask guests to come on, the level of discomfort that I am putting them through. And yet I will tell you, which is what I see all the time when it comes to cops in my practice, is that they will tolerate the discomfort of anything if they can help another officer or a family member. So anyway, I spoke to John and I said, hey, we're at Suicide Awareness Month. I kind of know your story, but a lot of people don't. And it's my reason for doing Straight Talk is it just didn't seem right. I had a lot of officers that said, other people should be able to hear what you have to say and experience what you do, just not those in New Jersey. So I, said to John, hey, with Suicide Awareness Month, and you're a survivor. You've been through hell and back, and kind of incorporates our workers' comp system. It incorporates critical incidents. It incorporates resiliency. It really incorporates everything that we're striving to achieve on a national basis, truly actually on an international basis. So John got nice and nervous. He called me up. He's like, I'm nervous. I'm like, John, you teach at the academy. What do you do at the academy? It's like, tell my story, tell what happened. I'm like, okay, so here's the deal. Pretend you're at the academy. You're with me. So anyway, so John, I'm going to have you take it over.
Oh, from the beginning, it started in November of 2007. I was working at overtime detail in my town. The neighboring town had called for help with a domestic. I respond, and I see the officers stacked at the front door. So I go around the side of the house, and I go to the first window and open the window, and I peek inside the window, and there's a guy standing there with a knife, holding a knife to himself. Shortly after that, I get called to the back of the house, and one of the West Everett officers had made entry into the back of the house, and they were, I guess, trying to see what was going on, make the scene more secure, but they came across two young girls. One was 6, one was 8 at the time. He handed the 6-year-old out the window to me. The gentleman that was holding the knife to himself had suffocated his 2 sisters, had killed both of them. I ran the 6-year-old to the ambulance, loaded her in the ambulance, and then I ran back to the scene and took up the same position I was at. Stood there probably for an hour and 15 minutes, I think it was, before a SWAT guy, I see at the front door, and I was told that another one was going to relieve me, but that never happened. They hit the accused with the OC fire extinguisher. He went down behind the sofa. I leaned in, not knowing any better because I wanted to keep eyes on him, and the SWAT team threw a flashbang. At that point, I went out the window. I couldn't see, couldn't hear, disoriented. Was able to finally holster up. I started walking through the front yard, and my wife was also at the scene. She was working her regular duty, but because they called for help, we had all gone. So she came up to me and she's like, you all right? And she knew right away something was wrong. She knew right away. She goes over to a friend of ours, Dennis Sims, who was the commander of the SWAT team at the time. And she told Dennis that something was wrong with me. He came over and he's like, you all right? I'm like, I'm fine. I just went back to the station, drove back to the station. I ripped all my clothes off because they were soaked in urine. At that point, I don't know if he was lieutenant or captain at the time, who's running our overtime detail, comes in, and I told him, I said, look, I'm done. I'm fucking done. I'm going home.
John, whose urine was it that was all over you?
It was the little girl's. When the body passes, it releases all fluids. So I had that all over the front of me. The kicker, my son was 4 months old at the time. And every time, even today, if I smell that baby urine or that overnight pee from anyone, I want to get sick. It just makes me sick to my stomach. Brings back a bad memory. I had gone home that night. Friday was the next day because this was a Thursday night. Friday, I went in and I talked to some kind of response team, but it wasn't a cop. It was an ambulance driver. No disrespect to them, but they don't see what we see, So I did that. I was off Saturday and Sunday. I went back to work. I was off Monday, Tuesday, and was back to work Wednesday. Had issues. They sent me for a fit for duty test.
What were your issues? What did they notice, John?
I didn't sleep that whole Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I didn't sleep. I don't think I slept 5 minutes. I was up, and I went home at 2-ish the night of the incident. Jamie came home at 6, and I was still awake, sitting in our bed with my son, just sitting there. And, I lost sleep like nobody's business. I lost weight. I lost sleep. It was just.
Concentration?
Oh, I couldn't concentrate on anything. I still can't. I still can't. But I mean, I went back to work. Like I said, it was November.
Well, you never took time off from work.
No, not after that.
You just.
The first 3 days, that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I was supposed to work. They gave me off. And then I was right back to work. I wasn't one to call out sick, but I was calling out sick. I would go in, and if we had a full squad, I'd be like, Sarge, can I comp out? And I'd comp out. I'd be there for like a half hour, 40 minutes, and I'd go home. Dealing with workers' comp was something interesting.
What about the fitness for duty? So how soon after did they send you for a fitness?
It was within the first week or two I went for a fitness for duty.
And what happened with the fitness?
I passed. I passed. I probably had since the incident, up until I think 2 or 3 years ago was the last fit for duty I've taken. And I've probably had about 6 or 7 fit for duty exams since the incident.
But part of that, if I'm not mistaken, is workers' comp is trying to get you off of workers' comp with these fitnesses because you're no longer on the job. It has
Right.
been, it was decided that you're no longer able to perform the duties of a police officer. But we haven't gotten to the good shit yet because
No.
you didn't retire from this incident. Oh no, boys and girls, there's fucking more. Yeah. So one of the things, John, is that, I mean, eventually you ended up getting in contact, with me to deal with the incident. And, that took a while. Establishing rapport, because the last thing you are is goddamn warm and fuzzy. That took a while.
It did.
And then it became pretty clear to both of us that you should probably take some time off. And it wasn't as you have made very clear, because you weren't able to perform the duties of a police officer. The truth is, you're so goddamn hypervigilant. And that after critical incidents, as is typical, that hypervigilance continues to increase significantly. The problem, and you're trained to muscle memory, and you're trained well to muscle memory. So for me, you and I had talked about getting you on some meds. The sleep was an issue, kind of, the concentration was an issue. It's really looking at kind of the totality of this and saying, look, talk therapy is great, but we might need to get a psychiatrist involved to at least do a med eval. So you finally agreed. No quick fix on that one. I mean, it took you forever to agree to do that. And one of the things that you and I had discussed is I wanted you off duty. Because the issue wasn't that you couldn't perform the duties of a police officer. The issue was, while you were going through this, I did not want, which we hear all the time, compounding trauma, so that you're involved in anything else, and now it is just a shit show because we don't know what we're attributing what symptoms to, and at that point we're dealing with complex trauma because there's going to be multiple things. So I had, you and I had spoken about it, and you finally agreed that you would do it, right? My memory serves me correct. Yeah.
Yep. It was late February, but yes.
Right. So it took forever. The first incident was what month? In
November of 2007.
So we're now in February of 2008.
Yes.
And I remember talking to your workers' comp person, and I remember talking to the person that did your fitness for duty.
Yes.
Because I wanted you out. Except I don't have that power because the
That's
powers
correct.
that be are over me. And I remember the person that did your fitness for duty said that unless there was a change in circumstance, literally, it wouldn't make him look good. If he had found you fit just, a couple months ago, and now was going to pull you out.
Right.
So, so that was round one, and workers' comp, of course, said the same thing. Workers' comp relies heavily on who they sent you to the fitness.
Yes.
So that, and they said, you were fit. So go ahead, because the fun is yet to come.
Well, we're at February. I remember calling up my lieutenant and telling him off. And that's when we did a real big push for me going out of work. You had called workers' comp. You had called my chief to try to get him on board. And workers' comp denied it. And March 10th of 2008, about 10 days, 2 weeks later, I remember being the very end of February, so I'll say it was about 10 days. March 10th of '08, I respond to a suspicious persons call. I see the gentleman. I get a description from the other officer that was working. I see the two guys walking up the street. I went to go pull past them and then pull in the parking lot of Dunkin' Donuts. I went to stop them, get their IDs. I get out of the car, shut my car door, and I was distracted on the radio, so I didn't have that distance that I had wanted originally. So we're right on top of each other. I ask him for ID. The one gentleman to my left starts patting his pockets and digging in his pockets, and then the gentleman right in front of me, and we're about a foot and a half away from each other, had said something to me. And I said, "What?" And I didn't understand what he said. And he says, "Get on the fucking ground." And I looked down, he's holding a .357 revolver in my stomach. I said, "I'm not getting on the ground." He's like, "Get on the fucking ground." I said, "I'm not getting on the ground." My mindset was if I got on the ground, I was dead. So he's like, "Get on the fucking ground, I'm gonna bust a cap in your ass." I said, "Then you're gonna have to bust a cap in my ass." He's like, "Get on the fucking ground." I said, "No." He said, "All right, you're gonna get it." And with that, I was able to draw my gun and I shot him twice. He spun, went to the ground. I then focused on the other guy, who was halfway down the street at that point. I yelled at him to get on the ground. And then I went back to the original guy and I started approaching him, yelling at him to show me his hands. And I started pulling the trigger a third time. And for some reason, when you see the video, it's completely shadow, but I see the gun out of the corner of my eye and I just backed off. I found out later down the road when one of my friends that worked at the prosecutor's office had said that one of the rounds in the gun had a ding on the primer, so they believe that he fired the gun. It just didn't go off.
Do me a favor, John. Just move back a little bit because you're really close to the camera. I want them to be able to see it. Perfect. And then, I mean, one of the things, because when you listen to the tape, I mean, because you right now are pretty calm. What is amazing is when you listen to the tape, which is unusual, you were really calm. You were really very much in control of a out of control situation. I mean, clearly your training had come in, your survival instinct had come in. I mean, you were not getting on the ground. You made it clear that you weren't getting on the ground. And he made it clear that he wanted you on the ground.
Someone had said to me, "What asshole tells someone that's pointing a gun at him that he's not going to get on the ground?" And I was like, that would be me.
So, and then you called for, I'm trying to remember, did you call for backup?
I had, after I shot him and I backed off the second time, I had called in shots fired. And it was like, now it seems like it was forever, but it all happened within like 10 seconds. You know, it was one of them days where, you know, you just having a shit day. My car that I drive was down. My portable had broke, so I didn't have the emergency button on my portable. I didn't have the extend mic, but I whipped that holster of the radio out real fast and called for help. And it is what it is.
Hey, you know, you're right. It was shots fired. I don't think you ever called for help. I think it was shots fired and the recovery ended up coming. And then what goes from there?
Once everyone got there, I finally holstered up. My body just lost control. I was shaking. My voice gets all, you hear it on the video, my voice gets all shaky. And I remember one of the sergeants drove me to the hospital. And at the time, we weren't allowed to carry cell phones at work. So I used his cell phone because supervisors were. And I called my wife, who was at home with our now 7-month-old. And I called her and told her, look, I was involved in the shooting. I'm okay, but I'm going up to the hospital. She heard shooting and hospital, ran our son down to the neighbors and said, "Can you watch him?" And got in the car. And I don't think she knows how she even got to the hospital. But she got there. My heart rate was through the roof. The adrenaline dump was just ridiculous. I mean, when I say I was shaking, I was like this. It was that bad. I had no control. And like I said, they gave me they gave me a needle right away to calm my heart down. I don't know what it was, but it worked.
Did you call me from the sergeant's car after Jamie?
No, I called you once I got home from the hospital.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same day.
Because we had a hospital in town, so it was only like I was there like in seconds. I was probably there before he was.
What do you remember thinking?
I couldn't believe it that what was going on. I was more concerned about what I had done to my wife. You know, I didn't want her to get that knock at the door, you know, knowing that something would have been bad if someone's knocking on the door. So I wanted to tell her first. And then I remember looking at Duffy, who was driving me to the hospital, and I'm shaking so bad. I'm like, look at this shit. And my body was just out of control. And I just wanted to calm down, and I couldn't do it.
It was like, it was a perfect storm for you. I mean, one of the things when you talk about your son, so you've got this 4-month-old. You need to tell everybody, like, how many children do you have?
I have 6.
There's like fleece of them, but so it's so the big. God bless Jamie. So you're dealing with a constant retriggering. You know, you can't change diapers. You've got 2 people in the same household in the same career. Both of you are triggered back to the first critical incident together because
Yes.
Jamie was there and saw what she saw. And now on top of it, now you're involved in a shooting. And this is truly, I think, every officer's nightmare is that shooting, and a shooting from weapon retention.
Yes.
So it just seemed like you spiraled to hell after that.
Yeah,
And
it was.
nobody understood. Like, nobody got it.
That's why I got this little tattoo, is misunderstood, because nobody was getting me. Nobody understood. I lost complete control of my temper. I didn't like the person that I became. I was definitely spiraling out of control. I remember the day after my shooting, I had an appointment with one of the workers' comp doctors just from the first incident. And he walks in, and he's like, "Oh, I heard you had some excitement yesterday." And I was like, "If you want to call it that." He's like, "You ready to go back to work?" I'm like, "No, I couldn't go back to work. I wasn't cleared anyway. I had to get cleared for the shooting." And he's like, "Oh, I never dealt with a police officer before. This is who I'm seeing for, you know, help. And he's never dealt with a police officer before." You know, and I just, it went downhill after that. I never returned to work. I became a stay-at-home dad, but I continued with going to see the workers' comp doctors. I saw you, I think, 3 times a week at that point.
Well,
You know,
one of the things, so after you were involved in the shooting, I remember making 2 phone calls, neither one of them pleasant. One of them was to the person who had done your fitness for duty and said, "We had tried to stack the deck. You just fucked that one up." And I'm like, he's never going back. There's just, you know, like, you have set this up for disaster. And then I called your workers' compensation person. I think it was actually kind of interesting because it left a very nasty message. I mean, a truly nasty message. And then she ended up calling me back because that's how your workers' comp doctor knew that you had been involved in the shooting, because I had spoken to her.
yeah.
And she had said, and when she called me, like she couldn't wrap her head around it. And I told her about the shooting, and I'm like, all I asked for was that you let him, you know, go on workers' comp for a little while, so he wouldn't have been exposed to another critical incident. I'm like, there's no way that we're coming back from this one anytime soon. And I'm like, and, you know, and I said to her, you know, you had no right to do this job with a cop. I pray to God that should you ever have a cop again, that you listen to the clinician. that they really are the advocates and that you stop
Yeah.
worrying about money. And I believe she had told me that she had a son who is in law enforcement.
Yep.
Yeah. And I remember saying to her in my nastiness, and I said, well, I pray to God if he gets into a shooting that he doesn't have somebody like you as his workers' comp.
Yeah. They were horrible to deal with.
Yeah.
They really were.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, it's like, so you've got primary traumas, secondary traumas, you know, traumas added to that, a wife at home who you're trying to, the best you can, kind of jade her from something you can't because she knows the job really well. She knows you really well, you know, and navigating all of these different pieces became extremely difficult. And your drinking then just went through the fucking roof. That was your chosen kind of how you're going to relieve stress. It was going to be how you slept, how you could numb up, kind of, you know, just try desperately to use something that would help in some way. And I don't think you ever realized how bad it was. I mean, you eventually gained insight into it, but you know, we joke around today that, you know, I have ended up on the front lawn and I've ended up in a laundry basket. Both of them during times Jamie would call me up and John was really bad and typically suicidal. And when he would get pissed off at me, he would typically throw the phone. So I have ended up on the front lawn. And I think when Jamie finally said, I just got you out of the laundry basket. I'm like, was it clean laundry or dirty laundry? But, you know, people that are listening to this, people that, you know and love you probably won't even know the depths of kind of despair. And then to deal with all of this while all of this was going on, I mean, your best friend in the world was your dad. And
Yes.
that you ended up losing your dad. So it's just, you know, it's looking at all these pieces and truly it's a tribute to you. It's a tribute to Jamie. It's a tribute, you know, to all the, you know, the anchors, even though those anchors were getting loose because you didn't want to be anchored. It's like you just wanted to go. And, you know, when we spoke last week about, you know, what did I want to call this? And I said, you know, the will to live, the wish to die. And you're like, ooh. And I said, is it true or not? And you're like, it is. I'm like, can I use it? And you're like, yeah, because that's really what I felt like we were fighting. I really felt like we were fighting that you had this wish that you could just go to sleep, not wake up. You certainly didn't want to hurt anybody emotionally. I mean, but that will to live would supersede that wish to die. And I really believe when that shifts is when we're going to lose the person. And just the arguments, I mean, the sadness, the almost begging to let you go at times. Just, it was something that, you know, I couldn't do, Jamie couldn't do, you know, and you really didn't include much beyond as far as family. I don't think you wanted them to worry. I think they didn't understand the gravity of it. I know
No.
you felt really isolated a lot of the times. Family events were tough for you. Going out, being around people was always really difficult for you after these incidents because you just, you know, that joie de vivre, that laughing, that kind of the joking guy because you've got a wicked sense of humor. That took a while, a real long time. I remember years ago, probably the most profound thing was, you know, I saw a guy who'd been involved in critical incident, child related. And when I tell you, never cracked a real smile, never laughed, never joked. And I remember about 9 months into treatment, he told me a story, but I'm like, it's fucking hysterical. And I'm like laughing so hard, I've got tears. And I'm like, what did you get funny? I'll never forget, it was just so profound. He said to me, the question is not, when did I get funny? The question is, when did I stop being funny? And that was just like, holy shit, so true. Because most cops, you guys have gallows humor, and you're fucking
Yeah.
like really witty. Like, you know, you can come up with shit and you're like, are you mad? So, you know, kind of going through that metamorphosis, I mean, and how tough it was, not just on you, on Janie, and then the kids. Because depending on where the kids were in your pecking order, is kind of the dad that they knew.
Right. Right. It was I put Jamie through hell. I put you through hell. I mean, I remember it was probably 2 months after the shooting when I really lost control. And I remember I was out of control. I really was. And I ran upstairs and I had 18 years worth of uniforms. You know, when I first started, we had wool pants. I still had them. I don't know if they fit, but I still had them. So I remember grabbing all the stuff out of my closet and I just went to turn and throw it. And as I threw it, she had come in the bedroom and I nearly took her off her feet. I remember, you know, the first time I thought about suicide, I had barricaded myself in the bedroom with my gun, and I had my back on the door so she couldn't open the door. And I know she was talking to you on the other end. And, you know, I eventually agreed after, I think, an hour of you two talking through the door that I grabbed the phone from her and I talked to you, and she had at that point taken all the guns out of the house. You guys had arranged for the guns to be taken out of the house. That was the first time. It wasn't my lowest though. A couple months later, I was still bad, you know, dealing with everything that I was going through. And, you know, I hate to harp on workers' comp, but they were horrible to deal with, and they're still horrible to deal with. It was June and I barricaded myself in the bedroom, and she didn't know I had another gun that I had obtained. It was a 357, and I had one round that my dad had given to me when I was a kid, when they had to wear, you know, my dad was a cop back in the 70s. They had the long holsters and they had the rounds that they held on their belt. And I had a silver bullet, like a dress ammunition. And I remember loading that silver bullet into the gun and, you know, holding the gun in front of me. And as I cocked it, the round, I could see it rotate out of the chamber. So I figured that was a sign, God's will, whatever it is, for me not to do it. You know, I wasn't thinking about who I would have hurt by doing it. I was just thinking everyone would be better off. And, you know, when Cassie had said that last week, you know, that really hit me hard. And that's when I told you, I said, you know, I'm a fairly big, strong, grown man. And, you know, I welled up in tears because, you know, I never thought of anybody else. I thought I was going to make it better for everybody else. And it's here I am.
But that's part of that suicide is the not thinking clearly. And yet at the time, you would have absolutely said to me, I am thinking clearly.
Yeah.
Because you don't realize that. And that's why, you know, when you're arguing, it's not about arguing. Sometimes it's just about sitting there and being with that person so that they're not alone, but that understanding of, you know, that the world is going to miss you horribly, and that what you end up doing is going to have long-term effects on everybody, including the kids, especially the kids.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, I had asked Cassie at the end of the show, so I'm going to ask you in the middle of it, what would she tell a widow? What would she tell an officer that's thinking of killing themselves? So now I get to ask you that, but it's you that's actually answering it. Where in her case, her husband couldn't answer it.
Right. I can tell you that I look at the news almost every day, and I see what's going on, and it's committing suicide, especially an officer committing suicide, is causing more harm than anything that could possibly be happening. One, you're taking your own life. You're affecting hundreds of other people. You know, there was just one in Cleveland the other day.
Yes.
You know, an officer was killed in line of duty, and then another officer committed suicide the same day. You know, I felt for that family. And I'm in New Jersey. I don't know the guy, but, you know, it's like they say, it's all one big family. It is. And, you know, it's just, I look back and I see with people like Cassie, who, I mean, seeing how it affects people. And I was going to do that to my family. It just makes you think about things, you know, deep down, really understand that it's not the way out. You know, it may be a temporary fix that you think of, but it's not a long-term resolution to anything. You know, no matter how bad you're hurting, it can always be worked out. Things can always be talked about. Like I when we first met, I came in your office the first time and sat there and drank my Dunkin' Donuts coffee and didn't say a word to you for an hour and 15 minutes. And here I am almost 13 years later, I still talk to you. I've been to Aruba with you and the family. You know, you're on vacation and I had a bad moment and you pick up the phone. You know, it's just, things aren't always as bad as you feel.
But I also think that's part of it is, though, there are Stephanies out there. There are, and you don't have to be a clinician. The key is to have that relationship with someone that when the world looks like shit, and the world is shit, that you can at least call somebody. You know, I've always felt, and I'm sure I'm wrong, and I'm sure my entire fucking profession will go apeshit in hearing this. But I really feel like I am tasked at a very different level when I took on pretty much an entire cop practice, is that I needed to be able to work the same hours that law enforcement works. And that's why, is because I need to be available. It's rare that I will ever, and I don't take the guns. I will have other people secure the firearms, as you know. But but I'm also acutely aware that that's what you guys are the most comfortable with. That if you're going to kill yourself, that in all likelihood there's going to be alcohol and a firearm involved. And that if you can put down the jack and pick up the phone, even if you got the gun in the other hand, I'm going to win that. I know I am. Because you called me for a reason.
Right.
You didn't call Joe shit the rag man. You called me. And it's just being able to be real, you know, and you and I kind of talked about that is you know, everybody kind of, officers put on that armor. And it's very difficult to go home and to talk about feelings, to talk about things that are going wrong, and to have a wife who's also in law enforcement who totally gets it. But you're also trying to protect. And yet you want to be able to communicate. And she desperately tried to figure out, you know, how can I communicate best? How can I get through to him? Because a lot of times what you would do is you're like, you were convinced, because this was your slippery slope to killing yourself, was you're going to make her the damsel in distress. She's going to be better off without me. I'm a piece of shit husband. I'm a piece of shit father. Like, you just go, and she would say to you, I love you. I can't be loved. It's like, oh, fuck, man, you're impossible. But because you were trying desperately to just poke her, poke anybody you loved enough to let you go.
You're absolutely right.
And that's that anchor. When I talk about those anchors, because as you're poking, you're trying to jar that anchor. You're trying to make it go up.
Oh, she's a saint for what I put her through.
But you guys ended up being just a good team, John. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's the key, is being able to communicate. And both of you ended up kind of protecting each other. The families didn't really understand. And neither one of you really wanted to go into major details because you were protective of the other, how bad it really was. And like I said,
I was an ass.
I mean, you were always the jokester or whatever. I mean, absolutely known for that. So your family saw this one side of you, your extended family, whereas Jamie saw the real you.
Yeah.
And I was able to, and you truly felt unlovable. Like there's nothing redeeming. I'm not a cop anymore because when you're pensioned out, I don't have a job. You certainly weren't fucking destitute, but to you and to most people, and they don't realize, that retirement, being able to get the pension or what have you. Everybody talks about the golden ticket. I would bitch slap anybody with that fucking golden ticket. Because
Yep.
they don't realize to get that, you had the worst day of your life. Like as much as people say, oh man, I wish I could get out. Oh no, you don't.
No.
Because you've got to take your mind with you and your body with you, depending on which one or both that you pensioned out for. And who has another career in their back pocket?
I didn't.
Yeah, most people don't. I think about that all the time. I think about, I'm pretty fortunate for what I do. And only twice in my career have I had laryngitis, but that was like game over with for me. I was like, holy shit. Most of the time with you guys, I could do something, but I'm like, I couldn't. It's almost like this my higher power's way of saying, you're done. Like you are bench staff. And like how many people truly, and I thought to myself, if I can't ever talk again, like what happens if there's like something wrong with me? Like, what do I do? Because it doesn't. It defines me as it defines you. And I remember once hearing, and so true, that when cops go to parties, you're introduced by, and this is John, he's a cop.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not, and this is Steph, she's a shrink. It's typically not what it is. but you guys are defined by that. And now we remove it. We give you some type of all sorts of fucked up that you get to take off the job with you. And then we say, hey, enjoy your pension. Thanks for your service. Bullshit. And
out of sight, out of mind.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Yep.
And that absenteeism, a department who you could have worked next to the person your entire career. I mean, you were on the job for how many years, Sean, at the time? It was 18, 17?
18.
Yeah. So, you weren't some guy that just, came on. You'd been there for a long time.
Yeah.
And in New York, it's 28, 20 is a full pension. So New Jersey is 25. But it was, that was the other thing, is it was gone. Like that whole support system was no longer there. The reason why you get up in the morning, the reason why you go to sleep, shift work, all of it was different. And you're watching your wife do it.
Yes.
And so she's living a part of your world that you no longer have.
You're right. You're right. And I'll tell anybody, I liked being a cop. I loved it. I don't know too many cops that don't love it. I mean, it's not like, you're not getting in it for I hate to say the pension or the benefits these days. You know what I mean? It's you have to want to do the job to do it this day and age. I loved it. I tell everyone, I miss being a cop. It was all I wanted to be. My father was a cop. It's all I ever wanted to be was a police officer. And to have it all going at once, and then it was like out of sight, out of mind, because, you know, I went through the bad things, and you don't want to talk about the bad things when you're on the job. You know, everyone, you know, yeah, I want the golden ticket. I want the golden ticket. But I didn't, you know, I didn't, and I still don't. You know, I wouldn't change anything for the world because I got to be a stay-at-home dad, and I still am a stay-at-home dad. But I mean, I just envisioned or pictured my future differently than what it is today.
What was the moment with you and your dad? It seemed like you had a really nice healing moment that you were able to get, where you guys were able to kind of embrace. You got to hear your story, and you got to share an experience. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, you were going up to Boston to give I think it was a 3-day class, and you had asked me to come up and speak, and my father came with me. It was the first time he heard me talk about it in detail, like I did, and you know, it was a good time. It was a long 6-hour ride up, and it seemed like a long 6-hour ride home. But I wouldn't have changed that for the world.
He seemed to get it though. Like like that level of communication, you know, with your dad who's a cop and you as his son, it seemed to kind of transcend different levels. And interestingly enough, we'll say it was before the Boston bombing. So this was
Yes.
quite a few years ago. So it's not like we were up there to deal with that. Um, So what was it like on the way home? What was it like after you had kind of shared? Did it feel differently with your dad?
It was, you know, he heard what had happened and didn't think of me any differently. You know, I think that, you know, I remember him saying that, you know, hey, thanks for still being around. You know, I mean, he would say that to me every once in a while, you know, that he was happy I was still around.
I want to talk about that because I think what you just brought up is really, really important and key, particularly with any officers that are watching this. You didn't want him to think differently, or he didn't think differently of you. So you were really worried that he was going to think what?
Well,
You were a pussy?
yeah. You know, I
Let's
was
just
going to
put
take
it
the
out
easy
there.
way out. Just put it out there.
Let's just put it out there. It's me.
Take the easy way out. You know, my dad he was the man to me. And, you know, he did years on the SWAT team. He did a ton of stuff in police work that I couldn't even imagine doing. And then for me to go through what I was going through, and, you know, it's any cop that goes through this. I didn't believe in PTSD. My dad was on the SWAT team for 10 years as a negotiator. And, you know, for some reason as a kid, his pager was in my room. So every time he got called out, I was awake and I would hear what was, you know, where he was going, what he was doing. And, you know, I saw what he did, and PTSD was, I didn't believe in it. And I told you that a million times that
Absolutely.
I didn't believe in it.
Absolutely.
You know, I didn't believe in taking time off from work. I didn't believe in medicine. And I didn't believe any of that. And when I was going through what I was going through, it certainly changed my mind. And then to do what I did and to treat people how I treated them, I was a totally different person. I didn't like myself, and I didn't want anybody else to know that person. And, you know, I was afraid of what he would think of me. You know, I'm a lesser of a person for doing what I did and how I treated my wife, and, you know, just how I lived in general at those moments.
I remember him being really proud of you. I remember him coming up to me and thanking me. And it wasn't, you know, it wasn't a thank you. It was the thank you was in an understanding that you had been through hell, and that you had found the strength in being able to live and to be able to tell the story, because that's huge, is putting yourself out there like you are today, like you do at the academy, even in Boston, and that was, if you remember, man, that was a difficult group that first day. Holy
Yes.
shit.
Yes.
And just kind of, you know what? From there on in, it's like we did what we do best. Like we're just us. Like you
Yeah.
just no bullshit. Tell it as it is. Here's the good, bad, and the ugly. And man, at the end, I remember them not only embracing you guys, but I remember them hitting their chest and pointing. Do you remember that?
Yes.
It was like, man, if you get that once in a lifetime, it was like, God damn. And you guys made such a huge difference to them.
I hope so.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know so because, speed ahead to the Boston bombing. When the phone call was made that said, hey, what can I do? Pro bono, for God's sakes, whatever, just welcomed with open arms. And then some of the guys came back to help fix up their peer support unit. So it is something that if we can get more officers like yourself to talk about, it's why we said, we did straight talk, and then then stop the stigma. If we could somehow or another make the shit you guys see and go through abnormal, and talking about it and feeling normal, we can change. We can change the future. But it's so hard. What would you say today? We've got an unprecedented situation going on. What would you want officers to know that are just being hated on, that just feel absolutely hopeless, that God forbid are involved in a shooting that's a minority shoot?
Right.
What do you say to them and their families to help them get through what is going to be
A shitstorm.
yeah, and a very public, in all likelihood, shitstorm?
Yes. Um, you know, no one wakes up and says, "Oh, I want to go be involved in a shooting," and that would be fun today. Nobody says that. Nobody wakes up wanting to do that. Um, I know that the percentage of police shootings is so small in the grand scheme of things that they said 1 to 2 people, 20% of my police academy class would be involved in a critical incident. That's 1 to 2 of us, but that could be a car accident. It could be anything. So the chances are really low. And I mean, there's so many police interactions and we do so much good that it's one bad incident overshadows everything. Do your job, do it well, and you'll be fine. The hate to say the silent majority is behind you, and it's true. There's no platform for us to speak up, and say, look, I got your back, but know that we do. That I got anybody's back. You do the right thing, and I got your back. You can call me day or night. I don't sleep. You can call me day or night, and I'll talk to anybody anytime. I require a cup of coffee. That's about it. And I don't care where you're from. I'll talk to you. But just keep your head up and do your job. Do what you're supposed to do, and you'll be fine.
And shootings in particular, as you said, I mean, it's rare that somebody's involved in a shooting, but the truth is, at least my perspective of the truth in this is, I'm going to piggyback on what you said, that not only are very few officers involved in shootings, but there is nothing that psychologically prepared them to be in this shoot. They were trained to be in that shooting. They were trained to do what they needed to do to stop a threat. But psychologically, there is nothing that prepared anybody for using deadly force. And the importance is being able to talk about what that's like, to be able to talk about that in a safe place with people that understand. And however that's done, and John, when people want to get in touch with you, you can reach John through me at Straight Talk, Stop the Stigma with Stephanie Samuels. But we can absolutely hook you up with John, because that's part of it. Anybody that's coming on the show truly wants to continue to get the word out, to be able to help others. Because as I said, this is an incredibly uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
When I ask anybody to do this, because it puts them out there, but they do it so that other people don't have to struggle the way they did. And like I said, after Cassie had said what she said last week, and John was like, "Holy shit!" And being able to then say to him, "Hey, it would mean a lot to me if you could tell your story, because you were touched by hers, but I think others will be truly touched by yours." And Cassie will never know that she has somewhat of a soulmate in you in this lifetime, because something she has said about what happened when Warren took his life, and the thoughts that he had done. He'd done them a favor, more or less. That for you, that was really something that you thought about, ruminated, and that today you can discuss, and you can be the one that's alive to discuss it, whereas Warren couldn't be. So it's wonderful. It is wonderful. So, in a wrap up, is there anything that you want to be able to say or share that you haven't yet with everybody?
My thing is just, if I could give a message to everybody on the job, keep your head up and focus on not the bad. I mean, I dwelled on it. I became a total asshole over it. I treated my wife like shit, and I'm surprised she's still with me today. But there's always someone there for you. My wife, Steph, I credit those two with saving my life. My father, once we got past a certain thing, and I looked at my dad as an officer, like what would he think being a cop? Would he know all this bullshit that I did and went through? But you know what? Nobody cares. They'd rather you be around than not be around. Nobody cares about the bullshit. They just want you here. And I'm the same way. If I help one person by doing.
John, you froze up. If you can help one person, go ahead.
It's worth it. As tough as it is, it's worth it.
You are an amazing man.
Thank you.
When they talk about resiliency, and they talk about all this other kind of politically correct shit these days, but to understand what truly that looks like, what that is to endure, and what that is to come out sometimes something the size of a wormhole on the other side, is you. And I thank you for letting me be on your journey and for trusting me.
Thanks for saving my life. I can't repay you back.
Anytime. Listen, you
Lunch
know what?
just doesn't cut it.
As I always say to you guys, you know what? Nobody's checking my tax records at 2:18 in the morning when I call 911. You guys are showing up at my door. I took that same oath. As long as you call me, I'm there. So anyway, I thank you. Enjoy, be safe, and I will see you all next week.